யாதும் ஊரே யாவரும் கேடீர்.
செம்மொழி வலையொலி யூடியூப் சேனல். இந்த சேனலின் மூலமாக, அந்த வலையொலியின் மூலமாக பல்வேறு தகவல்களை தினந்தோறும் நாங்கள் வழங்கி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த நிலையில் முழுமையாக கண்டு பார்க்கலாம்.
The chapter on இனியவை கூறல் is called by Ellis on courtesy, but he adds that the term may be more strictly rendered on affability. In this context, he chooses to explain that the genius of Tamil is to hint rather than to define the signification of its words, and it selects generally a single idea to indicate a class or series, and the author accordingly comprehends under a phrase expressive of their principal characteristics insol or இனிய கூறல், pleasing speech, the several modifications of the primary notion conveyed by affability, courtesy or similar terms. In one of his most learned asides here, Ellis wonders why so opulent a language as Greek has no term for இனியவை கூறல், forcing Aristotle to describe the nameless virtue as the immediate habit between flattery and moroseness, between that disposition which inclines the feeble-minded in all cases to sacrifice their own opinion in deference to others, and that by which men are excited to contend for the mere sake of contention. Ellis castigates certain European writers who, careless in their censures and slightly acquainted with the Indian tongues, have chosen to say that these have no word corresponding to gratitude, the inference being that the very idea of gratitude is unknown to the Indian. Ellis tells them, to this calumny, let this chapter of Thirukkural, the one on Seinandri Aridal, and the accompaniments to it be the answer, as in it the idea will be found to be expressed on many varying modes. Translating நடுவு நிலைமை as equity and distributive justice, Ellis contends that the Tamil compound நடுவு நிலைமை intimately corresponds to the Greek term for justice, for நடுவு means primarily the middle and justice by a metaphor only, and நடுவு நிலைமை consequently maintenance of a middle station or state of equality with regard to all others, not moving to either side or being biased by any consideration of fear, anger or affection. Though Ellis has set out to do full justice to the original, he is highly self-critical and at times, like a true creative artist, after giving a free as well as a literal rendering of the original, besides copious explanatory notes, he may end on a note of despair, as when he does in his struggle with the particular couplet, என்னன்றி கொன்றார்க்கும் உய்வுண்டாம் உய்வு இல்லை செய்நன்றி கொன்ற மகற்கு. Both the translation, he says, both the translation and explanation very inadequately convey the strength and vivid expression of the original. One wishes that Ellis had translated the whole of Thirukkural into English. It is quite evident that G.U. Pope, an assiduous student of Tamil literature, has done his homework before embarking upon a translation of what he considered one of the highest and purest expressions of human thought. The long introduction witnesses to the preparation Pope has made to equip himself to the formidable task ahead, even though he says that while doing the work he felt the lack of the advice and assistance of native scholars and regrets that no native eye has seen his manuscript. Briefly discussing some of the controversial issues relating to Thirukkural, he pronounces his verdicts authoritatively. The idea that Thirukkural may be an anthology of stanzas by diverse hands is rejected outright by Pope, who argues that it is the perfect and most elaborate work of one master, and that the third part, called Kamatupal, though seemingly separable, also bears the stamp of our bard. As one link in a chain of evidence, Pope points out that though the poet uses todi in the sense of lady 9 times, there is a studied variety in epithets, none of which are used twice. Pope is absolutely certain that the Christian scriptures were among the sources of inspiration, and that much of Valluvar's teaching is an echo of the Sermon on the Mount. But while mentioning the 12 native commentaries on Kural, he advises the readers to disregard the meanings read into the verses by persons, native or European, who are anxious to prove that the Tamil sage taught their own dogmas. Why did Valluvar refrain from any exposition of Veedu or Moksha? Pope's hunch is that the poet might not have been satisfied with the glimpses he had obtained of man's future and waited for light, or might have felt that his people were not prepared for higher teaching. Here the British scholar does not seem to realize that he is being extremely unfair to Valluvar as well as to the Tamil society, whom he has earlier called one great race. It is when speaking about the problems of translating Kural and about the Tamil meters that Pope steals a march on all other translators. He claims that his translation is faithful inasmuch as nowhere does it include an idea or thought which the poet does not intend to convey. It is a metrical translation where he tries to reproduce even the rhythm in many cases, though he confesses to his inability to retain the inimitable grace, condensation and point of the original. Having been mainly acquainted with Tamil didactic poetry, Pope gives a sincere expression of his experiences of it. He says, the best compositions are quatrains or couplets, each containing a complete idea, a moral epigram. Their construction resembles that of a design in mosaic. The materials fitted together are sometimes also very precious stones and pure gold. And the design, why, you walk round it and try to catch it in all lights and feel at first and often for a long time as if it meant nothing at all, till you catch some hint and at once it lies revealed, something to be thought of again and again. Some bit of symbolism it may be, not infrequently grotesque often quaint but sometimes also of rare beauty. This estimate, when not taken together with some of Pope's other statements on Tamil classics, may be slightly disappointing and may even indicate that Ellis, his predecessor, had a keener sensibility and could cover a wider range of Tamil literature than Pope. However, the scholar priest acknowledges the fact that Tamil is not a dialect of Sanskrit but an independent language with a copious and original vocabulary. That the Tamil meters are entirely different from the Sanskrit ones is also recognized by Pope. A very competent account of the meter of Thirukkural leads him to the conclusion that the variety of rhythms in it is astonishingly great. The prevalent tone in Tamil Venbas is called Seppalosai, meaning recitative tone, which is of three kinds: balanced recitative, that is Thungisai Cheppal, when only the ear-cheer feet are used; grave recitative, that is Yendisai Cheppal, when only the Venseer feet are used excepting in the seventh foot; and mixed recitative, Uruhisai Cheppal, where ear-cheer and Venseer are combined. Pope is able to identify the tone in every one of the couplets. For the three types of recitative, the following couplets are given as examples. Thungisai Cheppal, Malarmisai Yehinan, Manadi Serndar, Nilamisai Needu Valvar. For Yendisai Cheppal, Yadanum Nadamal, Uramal, Ennoruvan Sandunayum Kalladavaru. Oluhisai Cheppal, Tupparku Tuppaya, Tuppaki, Tupparku Tuppayaduvum Malai. In Pope's calculation, only one Kural uses grave recitative, 110 use balanced recitative, and the rest mixed recitative. The number of Venseer feet decides the gravity of the tone. There is only one Venseer in Agara Mudala Eduthallam Adi Bhagavan Mudatre Ulagu, whereas there is only one ear-cheer in Ennandri Kondrarkum Uivundam Uivu Illai Seinandri Kondra Magarku. Unfortunately, our native translators have not cared to master the prosodic complexities accounting for the beauty and splendor of Tamil poetry, even though they had Pope as their model and were expected to make further explorations in the field and provide greater insights than the foreigner. It was Pope's choice of the heroic couplet as the most suitable form for his English rendering that landed him in deep waters. He seems to have been fascinated by the favorite meter of the Augustans, who have employed it with remarkable success in their satiric verse. Pope failed to realize that this meter would add to the difficulty of translating a Tamil couplet known to be a marvel of condensation. When recapturing the sense and the beauty of the original in 2 lines of 10 syllables, each in English, requires a Herculean effort, the translator will be hard pressed to find a pair of proper rhymes without sacrificing the sense. Ever in search of such rhymes, Pope commits the blunder of adding words and ideas of his own. The couplet, Nahudal Porutandru Nattal, Migudikan Merchandru Idithal Porutu, is translated by him not for laughter only, friendship, all the pleasant day, but for strokes of sharp reproving when from right you stray. when in the original there is nothing corresponding to the phrase all the pleasant day. It is added by Pope solely for the sake of a rhyme for stray. In the stanzas of Kamathupal, such additions ruin the suggestive richness of the couplet. For instance, காலைக்கு செய்த நன்று என்கொல் எவன்கொல் யான் மாலைக்கு செய்த பகை is rendered by Pope, O morn, how have I won thy grace, thou bringest relief. O eve, why art thou foe, thou dost renew my grief. Here the love tormented lady cries, what good did I do to the morning and what harm to the evening? From this the reader will infer what the morning and evening have been doing to her. But Pope gives the details, doing what Parimelazhagar is expected to do. At times Pope invites trouble by giving his version in 4 lines of 2 rhymes. The Kural Tummu Cheruppa Aludal Numar Ullal Emmai Maraithiro Endru becomes, and so next time I checked sneeze, she forthwith wept and cried, that woman difficult to please, your thoughts from me you hide. The 3rd line, that woman difficult to please, is needlessly added by Pope, and the 4th line happens to be a misinterpretation, as it does not convey the idea, you hide from me the fact that your people have thought of you. The great couplet, Arithorum Ariyamai Kandatral Kamam Serithorum Seyilai Matu, poses an extraordinary challenge to translators. Pope's translation, the more men learn, the more their lack of learning they detect. It is so when I approach the maid with glowing jewels decked. Retains neither its beauty nor its full sense. Those who are not familiar with the original may not understand what Pope means by evasive it is so. V.V.S. Iyer, who ought to have known better, ruins the sense of the 2nd line when he renders the Kural, even as a man feeleth his ignorance the more keenly, the more wise he groweth, even so do I love her the more ardently, the more I enjoy her company. Parimelazhagar brings out the full meaning of the Kural in charming prose. He says, one of the major ideas constantly driven home by Socrates is that as we know more and more, we realize that we know less and less. This profound thought is used as a simple simile by Valluvar to describe the experience of a lover who says, just as the more we know, the more ignorant we feel, the more intense the pleasure that I derive from the union with this lady, the more inexhaustible it proves to be. Pope is occasionally baffled by Valluvar's use of hyperbole. The Tamil bard, for the sake of emphasis or for poetic beauty, may resort to this figure of speech. The couplet, Veezhum Iruvarkku Inide Valiyadai Pozhappada Muyakku, means that the lovers fond of each other are delighted by the embrace that cannot be severed even by the wind. Perhaps mistaking this for a wild conceit, Pope makes the literal wind metaphoric and spoils the beauty of the poem when he translates it, sweet is the embrace of those whom fond affection binds, where no distressing breath of discord entrance finds. In all his innocence, Pope does not understand that there is no room for discord in the situation that is described by Valluvar here. On a few occasions, in his over-enthusiasm to achieve Valluvar's characteristic economy of diction, Pope makes howlers. One of the best known couplets, நெருநல் உடன் ஒருவன் இன்றில்லை என்னும் பெருமை உடைத்து இவ்வுலகு, is translated, existing yesterday, today to nothing hurled, such greatness owns this transitory world, which may mean to some at least that this ephemeral world has the glory of existing yesterday and being destroyed today. Urged by good intention, Pope undertook a stupendous task and deserves our unqualified praise and gratitude. In his magnum opus, there are instances in which he acquits himself admirably.